Hello there! I just released the evolution of Boba Fett on Untitled Animate, so that means I can finally talk about his different designs on Untitled Aaron. So today I'm going to be going through all the different looks for Boba Fett and letting you know which ones are my favorites and least favorites. So without any further pause, let's get into it. And coming in last place is young Boba from Attack of the Clones. Now this is just not really have anything to do with his design really, because I don't care. He doesn't really wear any armor in this episode, so it doesn't really matter. But just it's not cool to have a young version of a character that is much cooler in his older age. So a young Boba here just kind of reminds me of the young Anakin, where it's just this annoying little kid, and I just don't care about that portrayal. Next up is his other younger looking version of him in the Clone Wars. He's wearing his man with no name cloak or whatever you want to call it, and again it's just kind of lame to see a younger version. I do like that he's kind of trying to get revenge on Mace Windu in these episodes, but it still isn't a look I really love. And keeping on this same train of thought, it's going to be his bounty hunter look in the Clone Wars episode called Bounty. It's marginally better because he has a helmet. He's wearing kind of more of a flight suit that he would wear later on, sort of, but it still is not really the Boba look that I like. I'm not sure why he isn't wearing his helmet that his father left behind for him, because he still is wearing a different helmet here. And it's a unique design. I don't hate it, but at the same time, I don't really love it that much either. And stepping away from his younger looks and coming in 16th place is going to be his look in the Book of Boba Fett, the burned flight suit look. Now, this is kind of no armor on him, which kind of is the same issue I have with his younger looks, where it's just not cool to see Boba Fett outside of his armor. And at this point, Temuera Morrison is too old to play the role at this age, so they had to give him a reason for why he would be aged up. So they start burn him quite a bit and scar him. So that would explain why instead of being a 40-year-old man, he's a 60-year-old man. Because really he should be about the same age as his father in Attack of the Clones, Jango Fett. So, but obviously the actor aged, and it is cool that he brought him back for this role. It's just I don't think it's as cool to see Boba as this barrel-chested older man with a lot of burns and scars, and without his armor he just isn't as interesting a character. And keeping on this same train of thought is going to be his look in The Mandalorian / The Book of Boba Fett, his Tusken look, which is just his brown robes, almost looks like a Jedi's robe sort of, and he also has his gaffy stick, and I think the gaffy stick is a cool addition, and he does some cool fight scene stuff with it. Again, I just think it's not as cool as the armor look. And obviously he had to fight his way back to getting his armor, and I get that this is all part of his story. His training with the Tuskens, him finding respect and learning how he wants to be as a character, but that doesn't really excuse that. It's kind of still not a really amazing look for him. So just for the same reasons as the previous looks, this one just isn't really my cup of tea. Then coming in 14th place, I could place this higher if I really want to, but I'm not a huge fan of the style, so coming in 14th is the Star Wars Visions look. It's more or less just his Empire design, although it seems to feature the more middle pouches rather than the lack of the middle pouches like the Empire look. This is more close to the Return of the Jedi belt, and maybe the cape is more green like the Return of the Jedi, so maybe this is supposed to take place between the two films. I don't know. But either way, I'm not a huge fan of this style of animation here. It's a little too cartoony, a little too big-headed. Still has some cool scenes in this, so I would still check out this episode of Visions, and I do need to watch the rest of the episodes of Visions too. So yeah, not my favorite design, but still not the worst. At least he has his armor here. And coming in 13th is going to be the Ralph McQuarrie Super Trooper design. Now this is the initial design that Ralph McQuarrie did for the character. This is when he was supposed to possibly just be one of many Super Trooper characters. It wasn't going to be anything like a bounty hunter or specific, so it's kind of more closely in line with a clone trooper or a stormtrooper kind of design rather than the Boba Fett design that we know today. But I think there's a lot to like here in this design. It does have a jetpack or some kind of backpack of some sort. I don't think it's actually a jetpack, but it is a backpack of some sort. It has the little visor on the top, and there's a little red triangle on the helmet. And yeah, I think there's some cool stuff to like here, and you can definitely see how they tweaked it later on to become Boba Fett. There's some inklings there, and yeah, so I'm glad it wasn't used as a Super Trooper design here, but there's some cool stuff here. And coming in 12th is going to be the Joe Johnston additions to the design. So after Ralph McQuarrie handed this off to Joe Johnston, he kind of added the helmet design that we kind of know today for it to be closer to. This is also like a prototype design, and then he would eventually like kind of refine it to become a different looking suit later on. But for the most part, his like biggest contribution was like giving it the visored helmet with like the T-bar there. So that's a very cool and iconic look for Boba, so like it has to come above the other Super Trooper design in my opinion. And I think it's like more of a unique design and more iconic. And keeping on this same train and coming in 11th is the all-white prototype test suit. Now this is just a test suit that they filmed on camera. It's all white like the prototype suits before it, and this is just trying to like see what the fit would be like. I think after they saw how it was filmed on camera, they decided to then add the colors later on, but it's still pretty good. Obviously, when they added the colors later on, I think it like popped the design more, but for the most part, I think this is a really good like kind of like from prototype to real life design that they kind of like figured out here. Like it has all of the workings and inner makings of what the Boba Fett look is, so you have to kind of enjoy for that. And coming into the top 10 is the Mandalorian's cleaned up design. Now this is the look that he wears after he cleans up the Sarlacc pit damage on his suit. And it kind of like, I like this look, but it looks a little bit cosplayish just because of how clean it looks. It's just a little too matte. It doesn't really have any shine to it. It has like no battle damage whatsoever on it, minus like the dings and dangs that are already there. And for some reason, he just has an extra knee armor. I don't know if they forgot to like mention that he forged his new one, or if they just didn't bother like feel like mentioning that, because like the other one went missing inside the Sarlacc. So I don't know where this other knee armor came from. No one's explained to me. There's nothing canon for it. But nonetheless, like he also has like a new darker like suit under the chest armor, which I think kind of looks pretty good. But for the most part, he's still wearing his Tusken Raider look mixed in with this Boba look, which is a good like midway between this look and the Boba Fett look in his own TV show later on. It's just a little too clean up for me, but for the most part, I do enjoy this look. And I'd be remiss if I don't add this into my looks for Boba Fett, because if you're looking at this, you're probably looking at a Jango Fett SPEED-ART. So this is going to be Jango Fett from Attack of the Clones, his look. Now this is a much shinier look than Boba Fett ever wears. It's kind of more bluish, especially like the coloring on the visor. The flight suit is more blue. It's just kind of more cleaned up look, more for like the clean look that the prequels had versus the more dinged up look that the original trilogy had. So yeah, it just kind of fits in more with that part of the universe, and it makes sense that it would obviously get more damage and wear and tear, and the colors would be altered by Boba later on. So yeah, I just really like this look. Coming in 8th place is going to be the look in Star Wars 1313. Now this is obviously a game that never happened, but there was some gameplay footage and concept art that was floating around, and I think his look here is extremely cool, and I'm very annoyed that that game was canceled. I think it would have been really cool. Disney, I don't know why they cancel things that are already midway through production. It looks like it was like quite a bit like already done on this game. Just release it as like a demo or a small something. Like please Disney, because this look is really cool. It's more like a dinged up version of his Jango Fett look, or his father's Jango Fett look in Attack of the Clones. Just the helmet. He doesn't have any of the other armor really whatsoever, although he does have some knee guards, and it's mostly just like kind of mixes in like more of a cowboy look to it. I think it's really cool, but yeah, you know, that's Disney for you. Canceling everything. Next up is his look in the Star Wars Holiday Special animated segments. Now this is very different than his actual look in The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know if they just didn't have the proper colors ready for him at this point, or they didn't know what they were going to do with the coloring, but like it's obviously not the same as the movie. It's not the same as what was in the parade beforehand. So I don't know what happened here, but either way, I like the light blue look for him. I like the pale pastel coloring. I like the gun he uses. The Wookiee braids are of course shown here. He has a jetpack, his side cape. Everything's like really interesting, and this is definitely the best part of the animated segment, and also the animated segment is just the best part of the holiday special in general. So yeah, this look is really cool, and I'm kind of glad that they kind of used it later on. In my next one here at number 6 is gonna be Droids. His look in Droids, which is more or less a cleaned up version of that holiday special look, a little bit more simplified in the helmet. It has a bit more detail on the chest, and it doesn't have the Wookiee braids, I guess at that point, because I guess technically the Droids show would be a prequel to the holiday special, although it came out later. So he doesn't have the Wookiee braids, he doesn't have his cool gun. He does have the cape though, and the coloring is a little bit more, I don't know if it's like a little bit more dark or a little bit more like less muted or something. But yeah, I just like this look a little bit more refined. It's by the same company who did the holiday special, so it's very similar. But yeah, I like the droids look quite a bit, and I wish I could have found that action figure out and about on the vintage collection of this droid show. I've seen nothing but C-3PO and R2-D2, but Boba Fett is sold out everywhere. What can you do? And coming into the top 5 is going to be his final look in the Book of Boba Fett. Now, I think I really like what they do with his look here. They kind of refine all the armor, they kind of recolor it. It is more or less his look from the end of The Mandalorian, but he has a darker flight suit, the armor has been like reshaped a little bit, the helmet's a bit bigger, the visor's a bit bigger, and yeah, the gaiters are a bit lighter. Just everything's kind of like a little bit tweaked, and it has like a little bit of like a back flap. Like, it looks really cool, and like everything's been like refined a little bit. There's a bit more stuffing on everything, so it doesn't look as cosplay-ish. Interesting to see like all the changes they do to this character. And yeah, they do use some camera angles to make sure that Temuera Morrison doesn't look as short as he actually is, although you can tell that he's like not as tall as like the original Boba Fett actor. But yeah, overall this is a really cool look, and I'm kind of glad this is what we got for the Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, on to the next one. And at number 4 is his look in The Mandalorian, the Sarlacc damaged armor. Now, this is more or less the matte look from before, but it's just still damaged. And I think the damage looks really cool. And he's missing his knee armor. He just kind of looks like he's like really like roughly put together. Kind of reminds me of like The Empire Strikes Back, when he's a bit more like rougher looking. It looks like his armor was just kind of scavenged together all on his own, though like it's really damaged. And I think the damaged look is really cool, and I think everything over top of his like Tusken look here, and while I didn't love the Tusken look on its own, I think with the armor here, it kind of adds to it here. So yeah, the damage look is really interesting, and I'm kind of glad we got like so many different looks inside The Mandalorian as well as the Book of Boba Fett, because yeah, there's bound to be a winner here, and this is definitely the biggest winner for me. But rounding out the top 3 looks here is gonna actually be something that didn't actually appear on screen. It's gonna be the parade look that he had before he even premiered in Empire Strikes Back or even the holiday special. It's just something that one of these, I think, sound editors could fit into the suit, so he was wearing it, and that's how he was first portrayed. And it's kind of an interesting look. It has more of the coloring that's more similar to, say, Return of the Jedi rather than Empire, though it does still have a very similar like flight suit to Empire. And it does have like what looks like ears on the helmet, although sometimes it looks like they were designed with eyes instead. And yeah, it's a very interesting look. And the cape is definitely like a lot more like Man with No Name, depending on how he's like wearing it. Again, like, that was a very interesting way to like debut a character, is like in a parade before it even goes on screen, and people were very excited for this look, and like it's a nice look, and I think like you can really feel this character out by just looking at him, and like you can kind of like imagine his backstory, and that's what's so cool about this look and like the next looks on my list. And coming in number 2 is going to be his look in Return of the Jedi. Now this is more or less a saturated version of his Empire look, although the helmet is less flared, looks more similar to the Jango Fett helmet now, I suppose. And yeah, just everything's like a bit more bright. He has the red gauntlets, and the jetpack is a bit more blue. Just like everything's a bit more brighter. I think like Return of the Jedi is a bit more of a brighter movie, so obviously like some of the designs were going to change to be a bit more brighter. They gave more pockets in the middle, which resembles more what his father wears earlier on, I guess, in the timeline. So yeah, it's a very cool design. The green cape kind of matches more with his like his armor now. And yeah, I guess like the only reason why this is probably a bit lower than the Empire one is just because the way he's portrayed in this movie is a little bit weaker, so maybe that kind of like sullies my ranking here a little bit, but I think it's still an amazing look. But coming in first place, and could it really be any other look, it's his look in The Empire Strikes Back. Now this is a bit more muted than the Return look, and the gauntlets are more green, his flight suit's a bit darker, the cape is more beige, just like a whole bunch of stuff. But it's like this is just canonically introduced the character into the movie franchise, and like you can't go better than that. Like the flared helmet, I just think this is like such an iconic character, and bring it to life on screen, and just like you can just feel who this character is, his presence and everything here. And I think like the suit does like so much work, and that's why he's like so popular. So really, like The Empire Strikes Back like show this character for who he is, and like going forward how they treated him, you know, that's up for debate on like, you know, how people feel about it. But you know what? You can't go wrong with his first look here. So that's my ranking of every single Boba Fett look, more or less. Thank you for watching, and special shout out to the patrons, especially Swan Boy Mania, for joining recently. Check out the evolution of Boba Fett animated, linked in the description, and I'll tell you something later.